achieved.
Welcome back to Kamikaze Overdrive MMA Predictions. As always, I am your host, Scott Johnson, and on this episode of the show, we're taking a look at the upcoming UFC 177 event, which will take place on August 30th, featuring the rematch between Renan and Barao and the new bantamweight champion, TJ Dillashaw. I'll be giving you my 5 main card predictions on this episode of the show. All of my preliminary breakdowns will be available at kamikazeoverdrive.net. Also at kamikazeoverdrive.net, you can check out the panel's predictions, the Sprawl and Brawl Fantasy MMA contest with the guaranteed $50 minimum prize, no matter how many people enter, and has been bigger than that every single time. Also, you can post your public picks there, and also buy the bet packs for $10. I'm coming off a pretty good outing. I went 7-4 at UFC Fight Night 49, which included some pretty significant upsets, picking Neil Magny over Alex Garcia, Talos Leites over Francis Carmont, and in the main event, I had Rafael dos Anjos to take out Benson Henderson. I had it by decision, but I did focus a lot on how much improved his striking is, and I felt he had an edge in the striking department, and that turned out to be the ultimate decider with him putting Benson away in the first round. Nonetheless, I've got 5 fights to break down. This might not be the most exciting card overall other than the main event, but anyway, let's get to that first fight of the night. The opening fight of the night takes place in the UFC's lightweight division. It actually hasn't officially been posted on the UFC website yet, but it is expected to take place as Yancy Medeiros, 9-2-0 with 1 no contest, battles injury replacement Damon Leach Jackson, undefeated with a record of 9-0. Now, as I said, Jackson's filling on a very short notice. This fight's still not official yet. He's taking over Justin Edwards, who had to pull out for an injury. Jackson is the Legacy Fighting Championships featherweight champion. He's moving up from featherweight to take this bout for Medeiros' 4th fight at lightweight after formerly fighting at middleweight. And Jackson, of note, just beat Leonard Garcia to win the title, the featherweight title under LFC, so pretty impressive there. What we have here predominantly is a striker versus wrestler, Jackson being the wrestler, Medeiros being the striker. Jackson 3-0 in Legacy so far, also 2-0 in Bellator, so some pretty decent wins and some decent organizations, but this is a big step up for him. He's, as I said, wrestling-based, all-American, solid reactive takedowns, good top control when he gets the fight on the mat. He does a good job of controlling his opponent, lands some very good ground and pound, advances his position, he likes to attack, look for submissions, good back control. He does everything, he melds everything with his submissions and his ground strikes very well together and looking for submissions. 3 wins by rear naked chokes, so he's a pretty good back mount. He's not somebody you want on your back in that situation. On the feet, he likes to punch his way into the clinch, change levels for takedowns. He's very relentless, looking to get the fight to the ground, and I anticipate that's going to be what we see here. When he fought Leonard Garcia, he tied up Garcia, almost immediately dragged him to the ground, mounted him extremely quickly, and set up a submission during the transition where he locked in an arm triangle while he was advancing his position. So Garcia was defending the position advancement, didn't see the submission coming. For Medeiros, he wants this fight to remain standing. He's coming off a submission loss against Jim Miller, which he took on short notice. He stepped up, but it was just simply too soon as far as the jump and talent was concerned. He looked very good against Eve Edwards when he beat Eve Edwards, even though the fight was overturned due to ruled a no contest. Landed some very good shots, having success also against Rustem Habilov before his thumb injury ended that fight. Overall, 6 wins by knockout. He has a very good striking arsenal, works some very good angles with his strikes. He uses his reach very well, a nice left jab, sharp right, straight right. Likes to throw a nicely front kick to the body, which can really keep guys backed up, especially a wrestler who's looking to close that distance. He uses a lot of movement. He covers distance exceptionally well, in and out when he's attacking. He's very hard to hit, and he's hard to time because he's not, he doesn't show a typical cadence there. He has been submitted once, the aforementioned Jim Miller fight, and he needs to avoid spending time on the bottom in this fight. He just has a single win by submission, so we really haven't seen a lot of his ground game. Considering it's a late notice and a debut for Jackson, and he's moving up in a weight class, these are all extremely tough. I haven't seen a ton of his striking, but his focus here in this fight should be to get the fight to get his opponent to the mat. Medeiros will use his reach and movement to make it hard for Jackson to close the distance and land those takedowns. In close, I think Medeiros should be the stronger fighter, even though the height's the same way. Yancy Medeiros should be the bigger man, able to outmuscle him. I think Jackson will hang in there, but my prediction is Yancy Medeiros to defeat Damon Jackson by TKO. In the UFC's lightweight division, we have Ramsey Nijem, Ultimate Fighter finalist, 10 wins and 4 losses, taking on Carlos Diego Ferreira, undefeated with a perfect record of 10-0. Now what we have here is 2 guys that are primarily grappling-centric fighters. Nijem's a wrestling-based fighter, and Ferreira's a BJJ player. Both men build their attacks off their ground games when they have some rough striking technique that they will use, but again, their ground game is their bread and butter. Ferreira is a BJJ black belt, highly accomplished grappler, 6 wins by submission overall, including his UFC debut. Good transitions, quick top game, finished Colton Smith very quickly once he got in a position to shut it down inside the first minute. is a little bit concerning to see that after he got out of the lower levels of competition and got up under the legacy banner, he saw a whole series of decisions. He wasn't able to finish next level guys until he got to the main event. And again, Colton Smith, not a highly experienced guy, even though he won the Ultimate Fighter. So interesting to see how he fares here against Ramsey Nijem, who's a little bit further along in his career. Now Nijem comes from a collegiate wrestling background. We saw him advance to the Ultimate Fighter finals on the basis of his submission wrestling and submission game. Overall, 5.26 takedowns at a 57% completion rate, so he's fairly active with his takedown game. He's put up some solid numbers, 8 takedowns against Danny Downs, 5 against Joe Proctor, and 5 against Justin Edwards most recently. He has good top control, a heavy mount, heavy ground and pound when he gets there. We saw him stop CJ Keith from that position, and he finished off Beneil Dariush in a similar fashion. Looking at his numbers, though, he sees some trends here with Nijem. In his 5 wins overall, he's landed 20 takedowns, and he hasn't been taken down. In his 3 losses, he's only landed 2 takedowns and been taken down 4 times, so he really lives and dies with his ability to be the dominant grappler. When he fought Miles Jury, he struggled with the transitions of Jury and was getting, outpositioned a little bit in that matchup. Really went back and forth, but still had that Jury get the better of the action on the ground. And we saw Joe Proctor have a lot of success attacking his neck and looking for that submission. And again, Fajeda's not a guy you want to give an opportunity to, because it only takes one for him to lock up a submission and finish it. And we saw Vic also caught Nijem with a very quick guillotine and eventually put him away. So those are 3 guys that Nijem went to the ground with and really didn't have a ton of success, and Fajeda isn't a next-level grappler compared to those individuals. Now, Nijem, he needs to be in top position. That's another thing. And you don't want Nijem. Ramsey does not want to be on his back in this fight. Now, on the feet, both are rough. Nijem did look much improved in his last fight, but still he's got a long way to go. He took out Darush with some ground and pound, but he landed a decent shot on the feet that hurt him and eventually led to the finish. But he still looked a little bit wild. We just didn't get to see a ton of his striking, raising his chin up a little bit. When you go back to that Miles Jury fight, he was coming in wildly and eventually got caught and knocked out. He's simply being too aggressive, and that can cost him. Fajeda is a very aggressive striker in his own right. He did a lot of damage in his final pre-UFC bout against Jorge Patino. With striking the feet, we saw him use the tie clinch a little bit, landed some solid knees. And the thing with him, he's not afraid to be taken down because he is so good on the ground. And that's something he'll throw some different techniques, because if Nijem does take him, I don't say recommend, but he will fight off his back. I don't recommend it, but you never know if he can pull off a reversal or submission off his back. That'll be huge. Almost all of Nijem's wins have been predicated on him being the better ground fighter, and that's what this comes down to. He will not be the better ground fighter unless he can really grind out Fajeda, but I see him making too many positional mistakes. Not the case here as far as Fajeda being the second best fighter on the mat. I think the mistakes for Nijem that we've seen in the past will ultimately cost him here. So my prediction is Carlos Eduardo Fajeda to defeat Ramsey Nijem by submission. Quickly, my apologies. I said Carlos Eduardo Fajeda. It's actually Carlos Diego Fajeda. Moving on now, we are in the UFC's women's bantamweight divisions. The number 10th ranked Bethe Correia with a record of 8-0 battles Shayna, the Queen of Spades Baszler, with a record of 15 wins and 8 losses. Now, Correia is targeting the 4 horsemen, notoriously led by the champion Ronda Rousey. She's coming off a win over stablemate Jessamyn Duke, trying to build herself, and now she's taking on Shayna Baszler, and all she's trying to do is build herself and position herself to be a viable option for a title shot because of this rivalry. One thing, though, this will do is it gives Baszler's, Shayna's camp a chance to be... They're familiar with Correia here because they know, based on the Duke fight, they've been training for her for a while. They should know what to expect. For Shayna Baszler, it's her official UFC debut, but she's, she fought in the Ultimate Fighter, and she's coming off almost a year and a half layoff, so it's been a little bit of time out of the cage for her. But she has some top-level experience. She fought 3 times in Invicta, went 1-2 overall, and she's faced some excellent competition. She's fought Alexis Davis twice with a 1-1 record, lost to Sarah McMahon, Sarah Kaufman, and Cyborg Santos, and she also has a submission win over Julie Kedzie. So there's some big names. Having fought in Strikeforce and Invicta, that's a big stage to fight on. But again, the UFC next level. For Correia, still very early in her career, 2-0 in the UFC with that split decision win over the aforementioned Julie Kedzie, and of course Jessamyn Duke as well, the decision she took there. For Baszler, she, again, just like we talked about in the last fight, Shayna Baszler lives and dies with her grappling. BJJ brown belt, 13-3 in wins in fights ended by submission. She's pretty good in the clinch, nice trip, body lock takedown she likes to use, good transitions on the ground, very solid back mount against Alexis Davis, who's a very good ground fighter. Shayna looked pretty solid in both fights, both the win and the loss in those matchups. The problem lies with Shayna Baszler is that her gas tank is not good. against Davis. She was winning that fight, and then eventually she got gassed and submitted by Alexis. Against Juliana Pena on the show, she was having a lot of success early on, and she was really controlling that matchup. Eventually she lost position, started to fade, and was submitted. Sarah McMahon took her down 4 times and really wore her out on the ground, did not finish her. And if you look at Shayna's overall resume, when she just gets tired, that's what it comes down to. In 9 fights that have gone outside the first round, she's 2-7. So what that says to her opponents, hold on, get through that first round, and take control of the matchup. On the feet, she will stand and trade. She can counter-strike, but nothing too refined or spectacular. She's scrappy. For Correia, she's a BJJ blue belt, strong grappler, strong in the clinch. She's a decision machine, and we know that much. She's not a finisher. She goes to judges almost all of her fights so far. She likes to grind out her opponents. Not big takedown numbers in the UFC, but she has done it in the past. She's very patient, and that's something very interesting there. She doesn't really rush into anything. She survived a couple of submission attempts against Jessamine Duke and eventually controlled the position and showed, how effective she can be on the ground, neutralizing her opponents and defending whatever they throw at her. Was taken down a couple of times in that matchup by some judo throws, which is something that the Ronda Rousey camp, when preparing Shayna, could help her to try and develop. But again, she countered, didn't spend much time in bad positions, got out of them, got to where she wanted to be, got to where she was comfortable. Now, Duke took her down, as I said, but she lost position and eventually was put on her back, and that's something that Shayna Baszler cannot afford to do. If you're going to go to the mat, you need to be in a good position against this girl or she's going to control you. On the feet, though, what we saw from Correia was some solid leg kicks against the much taller Jessamine Duke. Really damaged her lead leg, took a lot of that bounce out of it. Overhand right. She moves her head off center when she throws her flurries, which makes it less likely her opponent's going to counter and tag her. She will go to the body, which is something I expect her to utilize a lot in this matchup against Baszler to really take away that cardio even quicker. Throws a spinning back fist, which is 50-50 whether it's going to land or not. Overall, her striking I expect it to continue to improve as she's training under the Pitbull brothers from Bellator, and those guys are pretty solid strikers. Now, when she fought Jessamine Duke, she beat Duke by being the more active and more aggressive fighter, pushing forward, landing more shots, and just being busier. Baszler is quite good on the mat. There's no denying that. She has great experience, but her conditioning is simply her undoing. She needs to end this fight early in the first round, or at the very least, dominate the first, try and get a good position in the second round, and grind out the first 2, and then hold on in the third. This is going to be a tough... one thing, keep in mind, this is going to be very tough against a female fighter in Correia who's a very good clinch fighter, who's usually traditionally the much busier fighter than her opponent. And you look at ring rust for Baszler, it could prevent her from getting going early in that fight and could actually make her cardio even worse. I expect Correia is going to attack the legs, land some flurries, keep going to the body, push forward, exhaust Shayna, and my prediction is Bethe Correia to defeat Shayna Baszler by decision. In the co-main event of the evening, we're in the UFC's lightweight division, is Tony Alkukui Ferguson, 16-3-0 Ultimate Fighter champion, takes on WEC veteran Danny Last Call Castillo with a record of 17 wins and 6 losses. Now, physically, Ferguson's going to have a 2-inch height advantage and a 5-inch reach advantage, which should show up in this fight. We don't have a traditional striker versus grappler matchup. It's both men can hang in the other man's realm, but it's just not quite as successful. They have their areas of their strong areas. Now, for Castillo, he wants this fight on the ground. He's an NAIA All-American wrestler, BJJ brown belt, trains at an alpha male. We know how good they are on the mat. Averages 3.45 takedowns at a 43% completion rate. Very strong double leg. Good slams will pick up opponents and drive them into the ground. Good work rate from top position. We've seen him put dominant performances with his wrestling up against good strikers like Tim Means and Anthony Njokuani. In each of those fights, he landed 6 takedowns. We also saw him beat up Paul Sass, and that shows how good his top game is, because Sass is an assassin from the bottom with his submissions, and Castillo just never let him get started and just beat him up and took him out. He simply has a smothering ground and pound. We saw him against Tim Means do the same thing. The big thing with Castillo, though, is the frequency of his takedowns seems to fall off as fights progress. In his first rounds against Njokuani and Means, he landed 6 takedowns on 12 attempts. In rounds 2 and 3, so combined 4 rounds in those same fights, he had the same number. So basically, his ability to land takedowns and even attempt them is cut in half as the fight progresses. That's not something good, especially if you can't get it going early against a guy like Tony Ferguson. And Ferguson's an All-American collegiate wrestler in his own right, but he uses his wrestling Chuck Liddell style very much more defensively than offensively. He's averaged just 1.34 takedowns at a 57% completion rate. We saw him land 2 takedowns against Ramsey Nijem, who's fighting on the card as well. Single takedowns against Eve Edwards and Katsunori Kinkano. So those are guys he took down when he saw the opportunity to do it, but it's not his focus. We're not going to see him come out and lay on top or grind somebody out. 100% takedown defense, and he's which is pretty impressive. 7 for 7 in shutting opponents' takedowns. Edwards tried a couple. Mike Rio, a good wrestler, tried a couple. Even Michael Johnson threw 3 at him, and he stopped them all. He has a good sprawl, hard underhooks, and he has a good submission game, which against Rio, we saw him transition to that Darce choke, and that's something that if you shoot in and he sprawls out on you, you were right in line for him to lock that up. So that's something to be very careful with. Now, Ferguson on the feet, excellent power. We saw him knock out Kinkano, Nijem. He broke Aaron Riley's jaw. Nice long punches, excellent extension. Still has power at the end of them. Swift uppercut, which he almost uses it like a jab, which is really effective. Good combinations. A solid kicking game overall as well. He's a high-volume striker, 4.48 strikes landed per minute to just 2.55 for Castillo, so he certainly has the edge as long as this fight stays on the feet. And remember, those strikes for Castillo are going to be buoyed by his ground and pound, so it's actually an even bigger gap. Now, he gets hit at a rate of almost 2 strikes per minute more than Castillo does, but again, with the power advantage for Ferguson, he's willing to make that exchange. He had trouble when he fought Michael Johnson because of the pressure of Johnson, his ability to keep Ferguson backing down. He also hurt his arm in that, and he broke his arm in that matchup. But Castillo is not that type of striker. Castillo, he hits very hard. We saw him floor Edson Barbosa and Michael Johnson as well. He stopped Charlie Brenneman with a big shot on the feet, but he isn't nearly as fluid as Tony. His work rate also will drop off a little bit. His cardio, again, it's not perfect. It certainly slows down. And he has 2 losses by knockout. Anthony Pettis stopped him back in WEC, and Johnson also shut him down. If Castillo can take Ferguson down with consistency, he can take away his aggressive striking, and that's essential. He has had success using wrestling versus good strikers in the past, as I already talked about, but when he fought Anthony Njokuani, he won the fight, but it was very close. He struggled a lot to get Njokuani on the ground. He faded against Tim Means and had a lot less success later in that fight and allowed Means to get back into it. And he tried to score takedowns against Edson Barbosa, and he didn't have a lot of success either, and Barbosa really shut him down. And, Johnson finished him as well as a striker who he just wasn't able to get anything going with after the initial success. Ferguson's defensive wrestling is better than those guys, as far as I'm concerned. It will force Castillo to exchange in the feet, and I think he's going to struggle with the power, the reach advantage, and the volume, and, again, like the distance as well that Ferguson will fight from. And my prediction is Tony Ferguson to defeat Danny Castillo by TKO. In the main event of the evening, the newly crowned bantamweight champion TJ Dillashaw, 11-2-0, takes on the former champion and number 1 ranked bantamweight on the planet, Renan Barao, 34-2-0 with 1 no contest. And basically, this is all this card has. I never like to look down on matchups. When you look at this card up and down, if this fight fell through, they'd almost have to cancel it. I almost would guess that the UFC had contacted somebody to say, look, can you step up and fight for a title on the last second notice should Renan Barao go down? Or, this is a fight that really this whole event hinges on, and with still a whole week to go before the event, I think the UFC has probably got these 2 guys wrapped in bubble tape and in a bubble wrap and hoping that they are able to go. Now, what we have here is a rematch from UFC 173, which took place on May 24th. Only Dillashaw's 10th pro win. Keep that in mind. This guy's got a title with just 10 wins under his belt, which is pretty impressive. Not Brock Lesnar level, but it's still pretty impressive. And he's an Ultimate Fighter finalist, too, so certainly, that's also good for the show. He ended Barao's 33-fight winning undefeated streak when he did it. There was 1 no contest in there. That's pretty darn impressive. This was also the first title fight victory for Alpha Male versus Nova and Yap. Previously, they're 0-4 with Faber losing 3 times to Aldo once and Barao twice, and Chad Mendes getting knocked out by Jose Aldo as well. Mendes will be looking to make it a second for his camp here shortly. Now, one thing with this matchup, when it was originally set, the first meeting, it was kind of put together out of necessity to fill a hole. And a lot of questions. Did Barao take the fight seriously? He looks at Dillashaw. He lost to Rafael Assunção. He's saying, this guy's on a 1-fight winning streak. He was maybe believing in his own hype. He's had a ton of excuses, talking about a bad camp, just wasn't in a good place, kind of was asked to take a fight that he wasn't comfortable with. And on the other side of things, you had the best TJ Dillashaw we've ever seen. He was doing everything right. And a big question coming to this fight is, can he do it again? He showed a lot of movement. He was exceptionally light on his feet, Dominic Cruz-like, and even Joe mentioned that in that fight. He did an excellent job of disguising his attacks, switched up his stances. He looked loose. He looked confident. And one of the things they talked about was his focus in the first fight was to wear on Barao's stamina. And we talked about this before. Barao cuts a lot of weight to get down to 135 pounds, and the big thing was, get through those first 2 rounds and try and take it over as Barao slows down. Well, he took it over right off the beginning. He took the fight right off the beginning, but the big thing was, his stamina for Barao failed eventually, and it was a complete show start to finish for TJ Dillashaw. Now, with TJ, he mixed up his strikes effectively. He went body, head, body, threw a lot of kicks to the body, which took away Barao's cardio. He also went high with those head kicks, which, head kicks and body kicks open holes up for each other as they start to land, and the guy starts to anticipate which you're going to throw. He also threw a nice jab. He was landing some solid strikes in combination. He appeared to have an exceptional speed advantage in that matchup. And one thing that surprised a lot of people, he didn't shoot until the second round, and he only had minor success with his wrestling. He didn't really focus at all with his wrestling, and he was having a ton of success with his striking, so it's not that shocking. Maybe he intended to use more wrestling in that matchup. We don't know. He had a huge right hand that dropped Renan Barao in the first round. And, well, a lot of people say, well, that's what took the former champ out of this matchup. He still looked like he was, slow and fighting in mud before that punch ever landed. Now, Barao wasn't throwing a ton of combinations in that matchup. When he did, they partially missed. Didn't throw enough leg kicks, which I wonder if that wasn't the wrestling issue that he was concerned with. He has great takedown defense, but against a good wrestler like TJ Dillashaw, the more kicks you throw, the more likely it is he's going to take you down. I think he struggled with being bloodied and battered. The adversity factor, which he hadn't faced in a long time, being such a front runner and dominating his previous competition. He was routinely touching his face. He looked very distracted. The head kicks. Head kick was a big part of it. Again, I mentioned that he landed one prior to the finish, a series of big connections after that, and eventually put Barao away to win the fight late in the 5th round, which is impressive to finish a guy off who you were dominating and clearly didn't need to take that risk. Looking at how these guys, their mentality is coming into this matchup, Barao's going to be motivated to get that title back. He's saying he's focused, he's at a better camp, he's ready to go. For Dillashaw, he needs to avoid being cocky, but that win over a fighter, a recent win, it's only 3 months ago, keep that in mind, gives you a mental edge and makes you believe, gives you confidence coming into the fight. One thing to keep in mind as well, rematches tend to end early. There's a lot of fights out there. Just an example I'll give you is Anthony Pettis, Benson Henderson. There's a lot of examples that back this up. That's a perfect one. We had an epic first meeting, and the second one ended exceptionally early. Henderson Shogun was another one. Epic first meeting, second one ended fairly early, inside the distance anyway. BJ Penn, Frankie Edgar, the third fight ending early as well. There's some examples. You can go back, you'll find a ton of them. It seems to be a theory. I wonder if it has the extended camp and the knowledge that they find weaknesses. Shogun Machida is another example as well. Nonetheless, I'm babbling on here. What I'm going to go with here, I usually get burned if I go against the guy who lost the last fight, and I'm going to stick with it here, though. I think TJ Dillashaw had an excellent game plan. I think he's the better fighter. Found the weaknesses, is going to go after it. My prediction is TJ Dillashaw to defeat Renan Barao by knockout. So those are my 5 main card predictions for the upcoming UFC 177 event. Again, hopefully the main event does not go under, because that could really throw into question what they're going to do with this card, because they have nothing else even close to co-main or main event status, let alone co-main event. No knock on Tony Ferguson or Dan Castillo, they're just not there. Nonetheless, please check out all of my the panel's predictions on at KamikazeOverdrive.net. All of my preliminary predictions. Cast your votes in the public picks section. Please purchase my bet packs for $10 if you're interested in betting. I've had some success lately with those. And also, if you're interested in paying $5 to play or do it for free, the Sprawl and Brawl Fantasy MMA competition is a lot of fun, and all the rules are available at KamikazeOverdrive.net. We have an absolute ton of fighting. I've got some big stuff for myself personally coming up in the future. I'm hoping to continue these videos, but there could be a bit of a drop-off, and I may have to miss a bit of time or a significant amount of time. Either way, as always, thank you very much for listening, and check me back here for the next show.